Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Let's get in meeting mode. I don't know about you all, but I'm very excited. Let's open this meeting, please, with a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ray. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Ray.
And welcome to the Tuesday night 12-step series that's starting this evening by Peter M. And I'll introduce him in just a moment. Let's all welcome the new people. Wow, quite a few. We're really blessed tonight. We want to remind everyone that this is an absolute no texting meeting. If you need to be on the phone, please go outside and be polite. And we really am serious about that, please. I'm really grateful that we have in our community someone who God really uses when he speaks to teach us and to talk about his take on spirituality, on the steps, on the big book. And tonight he is starting a 12-step series here. I think most of you know him. So I'm just really grateful that he's with us this evening. So let's all welcome, please, Peter M.
You're fine. All right. My name is Peter. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hey, Peter.
Grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank the folks here for having me back. This came at the last minute about a week ago. But I'm glad to be here. I was here about a year or so ago to do a 12-step series like this. And so it's all good. And I'm glad to get to share with you what it was like living life on self-will, what happened to spiritual transformation as a result of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and where I currently am. What I've learned in being in Alcoholics Anonymous, not around AA, but being in Alcoholics Anonymous, and listening to a lot of my elders and some of my heroes in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's really so important that we discuss in our stories, because that's what we do, we tell stories, where we are currently. What's the walk look like currently? Not a year ago or 5 years ago. I mean, we'll talk about that. Hopefully I'll get to talk about that at some point. But where we are currently, what am I doing now? There's an old thing they said in AA to me when I first got in: you can't get drunk on yesterday's booze. So I can't stay sober on yesterday's spirituality. It's a new day. And my book is really clear that we have a daily reprieve contingent on my spiritual condition. A stay of execution, which hinges on what I did today. What's my relationship? What God look like today? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? Experientially, can we talk about that? Or do I have to think of something I did 6 months ago or a year ago? Because eventually that well will run dry. So currently, seems to me to be just as important as where I was and how I got in here. And very often in some of our meetings, we'll hear what it was like, and we'll hear a really long 1-hour war story, and then the meeting's over, which is okay. I mean, we give testimony, we identify with that, but then how did you stay sober, and what are you doing currently to stay sober, or more importantly, to grow in understanding and effectiveness? Because if I'm not growing, then I'm going. So I need to, and the word maintenance really doesn't do what they're talking about, any kind of justice. It's the caring of the soul. And so to maintain the caring of the soul is about nourishing the soul and getting soul food, which means, what am I doing with my relationship with this power called God? And so for me, I do a lot of inventory, and at some point we'll talk about this over the next 12 weeks, how vital and life-giving written inventory is. Not inventory in the head, because the head is the place I want to stay out of. And the spiritual walk cannot be taken with the head. The spiritual walk cannot be taken with the mind. It'll only be done with the heart or the soul or the spirit. And that's where we get to experience God, because that's where God lies anyway, not in the head. And so the head is, or the mind is the last place we want to be. And the mind, all it does is create illusions which block me from the truth anyway. So why would I even want to listen to any of this? So I do a written inventory in the evening. I go through the steps at least once a year, 1 through 9. And I find that 4 through 9 gives testimony to my third step decision in step 3. And I share this with the sponsor. I've always had a sponsor. I've always been accountable and responsible to a teacher, a sponsor, and I still have one now. And tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, I will be on the phone with my sponsor, if God gives me tomorrow, and gives my sponsor tomorrow. And we will talk from 7 to 8, or as long as it takes, sometimes less, and we will discuss my inventory. And sometimes we'll talk about life, and sometimes we'll go to Scripture, sometimes we'll go to the big book. I don't know, but it's none of my business. My business is to have a big book, my Bible, my inventory, and a pen in my hand with a notepad, and just ready to go. And there's times when I speak to my sponsor, we don't even glance at inventory, because the conversation goes in the direction God wants to. And currently what I do is prayer and meditation 3 times a day. That's where Spirit has moved me. I've been doing this for the longest time. I've shared it from 1 million podiums. My relationship with my God is the most important relationship I have, and that's not lip service. If you walk with me, you will see that. And I don't run around pontificating and throwing God and Scripture and big book at people, if you know me. But when the time is right and you sit with me, then we'll talk about that. Because I just wait for the door to open. I don't kick any doors open anymore. I did that when I was new, and I felt it was a disservice to the person. I didn't give them a chance. And I make lots of meetings, and I sponsor probably too many men to keep up with. But it's really difficult, extremely difficult for me to say no when someone appears to be sincere. And I say appears because we're good liars. And someone will say, really want what you have to offer, I'll do anything, and then 3 weeks later I don't hear from them. But when someone appears to be sincere and the intent seems to be pure, it's really challenging for me to say no. And when I just know I can't and there is no more room, I have guys like Mike Chase and Mike S. who will take the load off my shoulders and work with these men as well. And so I get to live currently in all 3 sides of our sacred triangle, all 3 legacies, because I'm in our fellowship, the sacred fellowship, the fellowship of the Spirit, and the Spirit within the fellowship that many of us miss. And I get recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body because of this big book. And then I get to give it all away in service. And when those things happen, we become part of the circle around the triangle, which is whole and complete, with no breaks in it, no beginning, nor no end. It just is. And that's what I'm just so grateful for. June 23rd, 1988 was my separation from alcohol. I'm here tonight as a recovered alcoholic. And I've shared this from 1 million podiums. I don't say that to be special or unique or different from anyone. Certainly not separate myself from anyone in an AA meeting. It is just my truth, my current truth. But I do know the same way I say I'm recovered, in a week from now I can be quickly unrecovered. It's about what I'm bringing to God every day. What kind of sincerity do I have? What does my prayer life look like where I am currently? Recovered alcoholic, first promise in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I get to bear witness to that and shout that from the rooftops, that I don't have to settle, we don't have to settle on being a recovering anything anymore. Now, that might ruffle feathers in some AA halls, but I don't care. It's just the truth, and that's what you asked me to speak tonight, my truth. For me, a recovering alcoholic, because I've been in recovering, that phase, that is riding the emotional roller coaster where my mind owns me and thoughts have me instead of God guiding me. I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. It's all about me all the time. I'm hypersensitive. I'm fear-based, insecure. My ego's the size of this room. Anything you say will hurt me. And I start assigning people roles to play so I feel good. So it's always about me. And page 52 in the big book talks about these bedevilments, these things that torment, frustrate, and harass us. So I don't only get past the obsession of the mind, which means I'm past the phenomenon called craving as a result of spiritual condition, but we get to get past the isms that accompany alcoholism. Because what alcoholism will do is go underground and resurface in other areas. They look like thinking sprees. They look like food sprees and sex sprees and money sprees and all sorts of sprees that I'm on because being present to the moment, I can't be there. I don't have the endurance, I don't have the intuitiveness to get me to the present moment. And if by chance it does show up, it's way too painful, it's uncomfortable. And I see a lot of folks go through this, that when everything finally settles down and they're present, they do something to sabotage it, like listen to the mind, because that's what we're used to doing. We're used to the drama. We're used to controversy. I'm used to gossip. I'm just used to living in before and living in later on. But when we develop the prayer life, it brings death to every identity that does not come from God. Because what we tend to do, and did my early recovery, was walking around in Alcoholics Anonymous with these identities that I assigned myself, or I bought from you because you just labeled me something and it sounded good. It gave me something. It was a false sense of self, but it gave me something. He's the tough guy. He's the lover. He's the musician. He's the money guy. And I would walk and have to keep that stuff intact because that's who I be at that moment. And as a result of going to God, all of that stuff falls away. And when that stuff falls away, it can feel incredibly painful because the 12 and 12 says we feel like the hole in a donut. I feel like I cease to be. I don't have any clue who I am. That is a great thing. Now God can do what God has to do. If we think about it, how often do we walk around with these identities that we need to keep up with? Even the folks with the big book. I'm a big book guy, and I will defend it to the end. I will kill you if you attack my big book. And we won't listen to anything else. We won't even entertain Scripture. We won't entertain any self-help. We won't entertain anything. It's only the big book because that's who I be. And what a sad place to be. It's called bondage because I'm looking for approval in some areas to give me no sense of okayness. And when I found real freedom is when I find that God is sufficient. Period. That's it. So it begs the question, how do we get to God? June 23rd, 1988 was my separation from alcohol. I had no plans of landing in Alcoholics Anonymous on that day. It was an awfully painful day. It was a terrible day. And I didn't sign up for AA like it was a thing to do. It was the last place in my mind that I thought I'd land, but that's what wasn't in my heart. And I was met with the GOD, a necessary ingredient for a guy like me to get. And it's given to me. And that GOD is not the God in the heavens. It's a gift of desperation where I came to terms, the realization I have run out of road. And it was made abundantly clear to me. And that place of desperation must happen. For years, I was looking to find myself, find my life in relationships and money and booze and drugs. And I couldn't find it. And I come into Alcoholics Anonymous and I find, as long as I'm trying to find my life, I will lose it. When I lose it for His sake, suddenly I have a life. That needs to have the tree pruned. June 23rd, 1988, I thought I was literally going to die. I knew if I got one more drink in me, I was going to keel over and die. And I knew if I don't get this drink in me, I'm going to keel over and die. I was at the jumping off place. And for quite a while, by the way, I was drinking and eating pills. And I couldn't get drunk and I couldn't get stoned. I was just maintaining. And I'm the type of alcoholic that needs to drink just to breathe. Just to get out of bed. Just to do anything. I need to drink. It wasn't about getting nice. It wasn't about feeling good. It was drinking because I got to drink. Even when I knew that the drink was hurting me, it was ruining my life, it's going to kill me, but I needed drink to figure out later on how not to drink. I need to drink. And I would go to any extremes, any measures that I had to do to get money to get a drink in me. I'm the guy on page 21. I had warnings of a doctor. I had therapists warn me. I had my family warn me. I had relationships blow up. I lost jobs. You name it, I got it. And I still went to drink anyway. If a doctor would have told me one more drink, you're going to die, I get a second opinion. I mean, that's where I was at. It's the way it goes. I went through 7 treatment centers before I was given the gift of sobriety, going into my 7th treatment center, I should say. And that was 1988. My first 6 treatment centers, I managed on my own power 2 days of continuous sobriety. That's all I can come up with on my own power. And Chapter 2 Agnostics tells me, on page 45, lack of power is my dilemma. I don't have power. I don't have power now. I'm given power. But on my own, I'm drunk. You have a different speaker here tonight. Lack of power is my dilemma, so I need to get power to have no dilemma, not only with the booze or the substances, but just life. I have a really bad reaction to just being abstinent. That is, don't drink and go to meetings. I don't do well with that. I fail miserably. I can't live life on life's terms. I don't know how, except one way. Give me a double vodka, and now I can do life on life's terms. That's how I do life. So I never offer that to a new person or anyone who's around here. Hey, do life on life's terms. And I know we're told that by many folks, loving, caring folks, but it's not a truth. It's delusion. Because when I look at my journey into Alcoholics Anonymous and my first 6 months in Alcoholics Anonymous trying to do life on life's terms, I was either drunk or really, really restless, irritable, and discontented. But I get to live life on life's terms here. The gift of desperation showed up on that day of June 23rd, 1988. And it's really interesting. I wasn't planning on stopping. I just came up off a floor in the back of an abandoned building because I was homeless in 1988, figuring out how am I going to get out of here, get some energy in me, and go hustle money on the street to get to the liquor store to get a pint, because that's what I would do. And when I got up off the floor, I hit the floor again. I collapsed. And the courage to do battle, Bill Wilson says this in his story, it just wasn't there. It was removed, and thank the good Lord for that. Because if I would have still had a little bit more in me, again, you may have a different speaker here tonight. I don't know what would have happened to me. But I just couldn't do it. I was met with the GOD, and that does not feel good. Everything caved in on me. I've shared so many times that God speaks through brick walls. The brick walls representing life were surrounded by 4 brick walls 100 feet high. And that's what happened to me in June of 88. Life surrounded me, and I finally realized I can't get out anymore. I'm done. I've tried every which way possible to control and enjoy my drinking, which is impossible, to manage my drinking, to regulate my drinking. Never got it. To try to do life, to go make money, go back to school, have a relationship, but the drink called and it owned me. And in June of 1988, I couldn't do it. When I collapsed on the floor, crying like a baby, that's when the moment of surrender was given to me. I'm not that bright. I'm not that spiritual. I wasn't that insightful to say, I need to surrender. And God knew that. He gave me, in the gift of desperation, the ability to surrender. And what recovery I have found out is all about are daily surrenders. Each morning when God brings me to, because I don't plug into the wall overnight to give me some energy in the morning, God wakes me up, breathes life into me. I start with a surrender to my God. And that's what was given to me June 23rd, 1988. And in that, I was given wholeness of mind. I was given a little bit of truth, that there's only one way out of these 4 brick walls that are surrounding me, and that's beg for mercy. And when I did, it went like, well, there's the doorway. And my plea was, please take me from this. I don't want to die. Those were the exact words. I'll remember them until the day God takes me home. Now, my story is, from the time I can remember, I was very, very fearful, not uncomfortable, fearful about being around crowds. I remember my mom having little birthday parties for me, and I'd run in the next room. One time I remember crying, hiding under the table when they sang happy birthday. This was way too much attention for me. God puts me behind a podium, go figure. I disappeared on so many birthdays, they couldn't find me. When holidays were around and family would come over, I'd run into my room. I don't do life well. This God allowed me to get to a place where I didn't want to die. I tried eating a whole bunch of pills one time. I wanted to take myself out because I couldn't do this drunken, drug-infested life anymore. I couldn't do life, and I just wanted out. And God interrupted my death. I tried many times to push the envelope when I was using. Maybe I had to go down and not get up, intentionally and unintentionally, and God kept interrupting my death. I wanted out. I couldn't have a relationship. I can't keep a job. I'm fearful when I go to work. This thing about growing up and being an adult and being responsible. My friends had homes and marriages. Just a home and a marriage, that means you have to show up. How do you do this? I'm just from another planet, man. I do not belong here. There's a huge mistake. He screwed up on the ledger when he said, go be born. Not time yet. And on June 23rd, 1988, I didn't want to die. That was it. I don't want to die. Please take me from this. I don't want to die were my words. Which is a huge shift in consciousness, a huge transformation that began. And we will find, if we look at our stories, whether we're in AA and bottom out, or when we come into AA or any 12-step fellowship, that moment of bottoming out, not the physical pain, but the emotional bottom, that is the catalyst or the springboard, as the book says, that brings us into a new dimension of living. I look at my first step, I look at my life, it's a result of me living my life in a state of consciousness driven by self-will. And the external world owns us. That's unmanageability. The plug was pulled that day. And it was scary as hell. And the only place I can go to was back to this God. And what happened on that particular day, I wound up meeting my dad through a series of circumstances. I was going to call him collect, and I decided not to because I couldn't fathom him seeing his firstborn, me, in the condition I was in. I broke his heart enough. Now he would see me looking like a homeless bum. I'd really kill him this time. But my dad made his way back from Atlantic City because he had this intuitive thought in him that I was trying to reach him and I was in serious trouble. And he left Atlantic City and made his way back to Brooklyn. I made it from Manhattan into Brooklyn, and he found me running through the streets like a lunatic. And he got out of the car and he called my name. He walked across the street. I said to him, Dad, I'm fine. I'm okay. And when he got to me, I collapsed. And at that time, I had these gray kind of work pants on, which were blood-stained and soiled. And I had these construction boots on that were pretty beat up. The right shoe had no front. And I had a turtleneck and a jacket, and it was June. And I remember this. I was sweating profusely and freezing at the same time. I was chilly. And it was June, which was hot up in New York. And I was in the neighborhood of about 130 pounds. I'm a good, 192, 193 right now. And I was diagnosed with Hep C in my 5th treatment center, and now I'm urinating blood. So I'm dying of alcoholism. And God knows what else is going on inside of me. And I remember feeling frail. And when you're out there on a good drunk for a while or a good junk run, you start to feel frail. You know you just lost that thing. And that's where I was at, skin and bones, and I collapsed and into my dad's arms, and he held me up. And I was placed in my 7th and, God willing, last treatment center. Now, you would think after that, when I get into treatment, I'm not going to be even considering a drink. But after about 10 days, right before they shipped me out to Minnesota, the insidious insanity of the first drink. Bill talks about this in a Mayflower hotel with about 6 months sober. The insidious insanity of the first drink starts galloping back because I know if I get a little drinky poo in me, I'm going to feel really okay in this moment. The anxiety, the sweating, the stomach, all that's just going to settle down. And it would. It works. The problem was, if I was to get that first drink in me and settle down, as an alcoholic, I'm looking for the second drink, and then the third drink, and then I'm out. And truly by the grace of God, they sent me off to Minnesota, and I'm here tonight. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we talk a whole bunch, we will hear a whole bunch about the grace of God, but for the grace of God, but for the grace of God. What I'm here to report to you, there's a huge difference between talking about the grace of God, or moreover, having the grace of God, and then experiencing that power which gives us grace. One is a relationship with God. One is just a gift that isn't even warranted. We didn't earn it. The same way a mama feeds her child, whether he's behaving poorly or good. She just feeds her kids. God feeds me just because I'm one of his kids, but my job is to have a relationship with that power that's feeding me. And sometimes we think it's what an order, I can't go through with it. It isn't that difficult. When I look at the work I get to do, that I get to do in AA, to establish a relationship with God and enhance that relationship with God, and compare that to the work I did to get a drunk on, getting a relationship and having one with God is like kissing a newborn on the cheek. It really isn't so difficult. What makes it difficult is my mind. In chapter 2, Agnostic, it says when we talk about God, difficulty arises with the alcoholic. The difficulty is not with God towards us. The difficulty always lies within me, where my mind has free room and board and owns me, and that's where unmanageability lies as well. It's an internal condition, never an external one. Now, I'd been through 6 treatment centers before I got to my 7th one. So I got little doses of information in treatment about alcoholism and drug addiction. And what I pretty much came away with was, I know once I start, I can't stop, and that was it. Well, that wasn't going to serve me anything good, because I suffer from a threefold illness. The rest of my information about what makes me an alcoholic is because my mom committed suicide. I'm hypersensitive. I can't deal with life. There were no psych issues to report of, but I just thought I had living problems, emotional problems, and I did. But those are not the things that make me an alcoholic, because there's a lot of civilians out there who have emotional problems, who have family issues, and it goes on ad infinitum, but they don't land in Alcoholics Anonymous. They get jobs, raise families, and get on with their life. But I'm an alcoholic, and what I do is I pour booze on that stuff, and it works. Alcohol works on my alcoholism. What I found out in Alcoholics Anonymous, that going to meetings doesn't treat alcoholism. Going to meetings doesn't treat drug addiction. It's one part of a 3-sided triangle. We get to meet here. We have camaraderie. We identify with our stories. We hear a solution, and then we go home. And my mind goes home with me. And my mind tucks me in. And my mind wakes me up. And my mind goes wherever I am. And that is the main problem. And going to meetings is not going to fix that. It's not the solution. I need to be at meetings. I get to be at meetings. But just meetings alone. Meeting makers, I'll go out on a limb here and piss off half the room. Meeting makers die. Some meeting makers don't make it. Some meeting makers get loaded right after a meeting. Some meeting makers get loaded on the way to a meeting. If it was only meeting makers make it, this big book would be a postcard of about 3 by 5 and said, make a lot of meetings, period, you're good. But they have 164 pages that are directed at a guy like me, and 43 pages that deal with just step 1. 43 pages talk about the problem. They talk about the body from 17 to 23 and the mind from 23 to 43. 2 bullets. And they talk about the spiritual malady that I suffer from, which is a sense of a disconnection between me and God. Now, we can never be literally separated from that power which we already come from. But there is a feeling, a sense of separation between me and a God. And that means I'm in self-reliance, which most of us do. Self-reliance. When we keep going back to that which is killing us, it comes from the mind. That's a result, a byproduct of self-reliance. Think about through the day today, how much self-reliance you operated on and compared to God-reliance. When I'm in God-reliance, I'm still. I have no issues with anyone. When I'm in self-reliance, remorse, guilt, envy, the 7 deadly sins, I'm in collision with everyone, including me, and always with God. And so what the 12-step do is reduce me down to nothing, no thing. That's what the steps do. And when that happens, it drives me right to God. The only thing that's left is God standing right in front of us. I didn't know anything about this. 6 treatment centers. I talked about my issues, my feelings, my dysfunctional family, my triggers, my enablers. How do you feel today? Are you feeling sad? Let's talk about sadness today. I'm sad because I can't get drunk. Next group. So what do I suffer from? A threefold illness. body, mind, and spirit. Now, some folks out there are calling it a twofold illness. I don't understand that because my book is really clear that it is a threefold illness. I have a spiritual malady, which is a condition. My condition with God is not good. There is no relationship. I believe in God, I'm agnostic, but you can't prove the existence of it. I know there's something out there. I'll worry about it when I die. Right now I got to do what I got to do. I need to man up. And as long as I'm in that place, what I will go back to is that which is always killing me. And if I don't go back to a drink or a drug, I'm going to go back to some other thing that makes me feel okay. Bondage is seeking validation outside of God. That's bondage. Bondage is seeking validation outside of God. What makes me feel good? What attention can I get? What can I do to make me feel good? It's always an external remedy, which is always a liability for what owns me, and that's in this internal condition, and that's alcoholism. It's not in the body. The body is a result of me drinking, and it just reacts abnormally. If my mind doesn't tell me to pick up a drink, if my mind doesn't tell me to commit adultery, if my mind doesn't tell me to steal a rob a store, if my mind doesn't tell me to boost that stuff, if my mind doesn't tell me to steal a car, I'm not doing it. I'm just kind of walking free and easy. But my mind says, yeah, go do it. And it owns me, so I go do it. Knowing that once I start, I can't stop. I mean, how many of us going to the liquor store or going to see the drug dealer knew this was a really bad idea? This is not good. Even crying on the way to the place, but there you are, give me two. Give me a pint. And cursing ourselves for being a weakling. This is really bad. I can't believe I'm doing this. I used to look at the blackberry brandy bottle and curse the bottle. And I'd look in the mirror and spit at the mirror because I despise what was looking back because I'm weak and cowardly. But that's all I could do. That's all I'm capable of doing on my own power is getting drunk. Now, the ego doesn't want to hear that. And what Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps will do is kill the ego and feed the spirit. And for so long, I was feeding the ego and killing the spirit. I was breathing no life, giving no nourishment to the spirit. That's why it feels so upside down in early recovery. Especially when we get introduced to a big book sponsor who's going to take us through the big book. The ego screams, get away from me. I watch it when I do workshops like this. 45 guys are going 18 cups of coffee 10 minutes later. Because we're talking about God and the 12 steps. We're talking about our disease and discomfort. The ego wants no part of that. Or we start texting, or we start going outside. We start shifting in our chairs. What I'm seeing is the ego's getting attacked. And now I have to sit through that. And it feels really uncomfortable. But once I recognize that, the ego is a terrible poker player because now we know what it's doing. And I can smash the ego by staying and paying attention and then taking that information home. We're all going to leave at 9 o'clock when this meeting's over. Who's going home with you? Newcomers, don't get any ideas. That's not what I mean. Who's going home with you? The mind. Who's tucking you in? The mind. Who's waking you up? That guy ain't going anywhere. That is the predator. And so my book, and More About Alcoholism, talks specifically about the mind. This big book is not aimed at the mind, by the way. They talk about the mind and the predator it is. But the book is aimed at the spirit because only the spirit or the heart or the soul can do this walk. And so we're pumping life back into it and creating a oneness with God. My book tells me the main problem centers in the mind rather than the body. So let me just share what this looks like. I'm in my 5th treatment center, and I was up there for 9 weeks in my 5th treatment center. And I always like to share the story because for me it really illustrates alcoholism in my life. On my way into my 5th treatment center, back to this place in Amityville, Long Island, on my way in, I'm swearing off the stuff for good and all. I got holes in my arms. I'm in serious trouble, and I know it, and I look it, and I'm done. I'm so done with all of this, never again. And instead of 28 days, which they used to do back in the day, the 28-day spin dry thing, they wrote up on my chart some psych issues which didn't exist, but so the insurance companies would keep me. They wrote up psych issues, so they paid to keep me longer. They lied. Because they knew if they discharged me for 28 days, I'm dead. So they wind up holding me for 9 weeks in this treatment center in Amityville, Long Island. 9 weeks. And after 9 weeks, you start to bounce back a little bit. I'm able to hold some food instead of eating and having to run to the restroom. I'm able to drink water. I would drink water and it'd run right through me. I was starting to sleep a little bit, and they were taking me to the gym, and I was even working out a little bit. Got a little color back on my face. I wasn't that you know that gray color we are when we think we look good and we're like gray? I had color back in my face, and I was somewhat upright and sober and alert. And I'm participating in group, and I'm running the group. I'm thinking I'm Moses now, and everything's pretty cool. And about 10 days before they discharged me with 9 weeks of being in this treatment center, I remember saying to myself, wow, I'm not even thinking about drinking or the other stuff. I've done it. I'm good. I'm really good. I've learned I'm good to go. And that's how it went. Bill Wilson says in his story how the goose hung high. Things were good for a little while. Then they discharged me on a Saturday morning after 9 weeks of being in treatment. Now, it's really important to understand my body did not need any mood or mind-altering substance. It wasn't going through post-acute withdrawal syndrome. My body was fine, physically pretty strong at this point. Not as strong as it should have been, but fairly strong. But there was no craving going on. A lot of times the newcomers say with like 30 days, 90 days, I'm craving. You're not craving. Craving's long gone. You're in a place of obsession. That feels like a craving, which I'm about to explain to you exactly how it happened to me. I get discharged on a Saturday, and immediately, as soon as I crossed the threshold onto Sunrise Highway in Long Island, anxiety met me at the door. I could feel it in my chest. The chatter of 1,000 voices, all of a sudden, they all walk up to talking to me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even have a conversation with someone because I was stuttering. I was just a bundle of nerves. I couldn't even function. Oh my God, this is terrible. It's called white knuckle sobriety, or what I like to call untreated alcoholism, which we can have in AA with 30 years sober. There was no spiritual connection. I was dry. I don't do good with abstinence. I hold on for 2 days. I go back to my dad's house, and I just got to get out of it. I can't. The walls are closing in, and my mind said a drink would fix this. I hold on for 2 days. On Monday morning, I go downtown Brooklyn. I leave Staten Island. I go all the way to downtown Brooklyn to the liquor store I would go to often because I figured no one in Staten Island would see me drinking in Brooklyn. Because I knew this wasn't a good plan, but I had to drink. And I'm waiting for the liquor store owner to get there. He finally opens up his store, and I go in, I put my money under the glass partition, and I get a pint of Mr. Boston Blackberry Brandy. I run outside, I crack the seal, and it goes down as fast as I can get it down. While I'm waiting for him, my body is vibrating. For you dope fiends, you can call it what dope sick feels like. Alkies know exactly what I'm talking about. You're crawling out of your skin. And I remember, as I'm waiting for him, my hands are doing this. My hands didn't need to be doing this. There was no reason for my body to feel like I need a drink or I'm going to die. But my mind had other plans where the main problem lies. It will make me feel like my body needs a drink after 9 weeks. And as soon as it went down, after a couple of minutes, everything settled down. I can breathe. The anxiety slowed down. My thinking stopped racing. Okay. It works. The problem is I'm alcoholic. When I finished off that pint, I needed to go hustle up money to get a second pint. And I polished that off just as quick as the first one, and I got some more money. And I remember on my way to get the third pint, I'm thinking, the Red Hook projects are not too far from here, and I need to get some pills now. And off I go. Just like that, I get hijacked. And it started with the predator owning me, saying, you need a drink. So much so, my body feels like it literally needs a drink, and it didn't need a drink. This is untreated alcoholism. So, being separated from a substance has little to do with being recovered. It just means I'm separated. And for me, don't drink, go to meetings, for me personally, is a death sentence. Because I can't pull that off. If I cannot drink on my own power, then why do I have to come to an AA meeting a few times a week? Why would I need to do all the things I work with, the spiritual disciplines, if just putting the plug in a jug was sufficient? I would put the plug in a jug after treatment center 1 and get on with my life. But what I do is the plug never goes in the jug. Once it comes out, it's out until the next pint. With me? So I suffer from this phenomenon called craving and obviously this mental obsession. And to me, I couldn't see the moral of that story back then. I just cursed myself again for being a weakling. But years later, I can see exactly what I suffer from. I'm an alcoholic, and this is what I do. On my way into my 5th treatment center, my family basically disowned me at this point. I was a longshoreman for a long time. A job is impossible to lose, and I got fired from that job. I burned every bridge. Now, anyone who's right-minded, wholeness of mind, would say, okay, I need to turn over a new leaf. I just didn't have the power to do it. I wasn't ready to be where I was in 1988, and that was to be made fundamentally different from deep down inside out. And some of us can come into AA. I was one of them for a while. Well, I want things to change, but not completely change. I want to work on the defects, but not every defect. I just want the edges trimmed down a little bit. I'm not looking to be fundamentally different. It means up is down and down is up. Complete change, a radical change, a drastic and revolutionary proposal. And I had to get to a place of running out of road to even be willing to do that. In 1988, I didn't care. At that point, if you put me on a hill with a bunch of monks and I had to shave my head, it beats the streets. And I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. When I drink alcohol, the craving's always intensified, never satisfied. That's part of my illness. I don't have a drink just to settle down. I got to keep drinking. And what takes me back to the drink when I know it's a bad idea? I'm in treatment center business for many years, and so many young folks, even older folks, when I sit them down and say, what's wrong with you? They'll give me a whole bunch of reasons. None of them make them alcoholic. They just got problems. Some of them might say, like I did, well, once I start, I can't stop. And that's all they got. And that's where I was at. I knew once I start, I can't stop. I didn't know about how my body reacts differently when booze goes in or any other substance. I hate weed. I never liked weed. I used to roll pregnant joints, if you know what I mean. It was just one big annoyance. And I don't know if they do it now. You had to get the album and drop the stuff on the album, get the seeds out of it. It was just, come on, just crack the seal and get drunk and let's get on with our life. So this whole thing you had to do to roll one joint. I don't have time for this. And I didn't like weed. I smoked it, got instantly paranoid. It just, you get hungry. Everything is like, wow, cool. Listen to Grateful Dead music all of a sudden. I'm calling everyone dude after 2 minutes, and the whole thing went. But if I was to smoke a joint and get that lift, I'm powerless over where something I don't even like takes me to. Because once I start doing that, I'm going to the liquor store. Now I'm going to get my stuff. Maybe there's dope fiends out here who only use dope. Well, I don't even drink. It's not a problem. Have a couple of drinks. I'll see you in the dope house. Because once you get liftoff, you go into what you always like. That's why there's another fellowship that says any mood or mind-altering substance. They nailed it. Because that's what happens. Even though I know that once I start this, I can't stop by my own admission. So what drives me back to it? And that is this thing called the obsession of the mind. My mind, my thinking is broken. It doesn't work. I'm broken. 28 years later, I'm a broken individual. I'm flawed. My car leaks oil. I leak oil. It's never going to get repaired. That's the state of my condition. I am broken. And out of that brokenness is where I need to go to God to get fixed. There's a great freedom that happens in coming to the realization of our own humanness or brokenness. We get to do godly things because we know we are not God anymore, but we call on that power called God to do godly things. Prior to that, it's all self-reliance. So I got this mind, this obsession in the mind that drives me, it owns me, it drives me to places I don't want to be and to do things I don't want to do, to say things I regret saying, and always to get drunk. And there's no way out of that. I can't outthink it. Page 24 in our big book talks about how trying to think the drink through or play the tape to the end or keep it green doesn't work. The almost certain consequences that follow even for me taking a glass of beer or smoking a little weed don't crowd into my mind to stop me. They're pushed aside in favor of the foolish idea that I can have one and get away with it. I can't even remember the consequences of yesterday. Well, that was yesterday. That's because I hung out with Louie. That's because I hung out with Mike. I'll hang out with some other guy. I won't even hang out with anyone. I'll get my own pint and go back to my house. Can't get in trouble that way. Yes, I can. I cause a traffic jam and I'm the only guy on the road. That's how I operate. 10 days, I'm in my 7 treatment center, and I'm thinking about drinking again. Almost 6 months to the day, December 22nd, 1988. 6 months separated. 1 foot in the program, 1 foot in the street. 1 foot in the fellowship, 1 foot in the street. I'm around. Going to meetings, but I'm around. December 22nd, 1988, the insidious insanity of the first drink was showing up again. I'm thinking if I need to get a drink, if I can get a drink in me, this life, which is really painful, will settle down again. I'll be okay. And truly, by God's grace, that I wind up in front of this gentleman's door in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. And he let me in, and I told him my tales of woe, what I was experiencing, how bad it was, how much I miss home, and it went on and on and on. And when I finally paused, he said to me, Peter, where are you with God and the 12 steps? And I remember how I answered this with the question, when do you start the steps? And he said, when you stop throwing up, you're late. I wanted a hug. I wanted, let's have coffee. Let's talk about our feelings today. Let's have a heart-to-heart. But he was in the life-saving business. I did enough feelings groups in treatment for 100 people. We need to get down to causes and conditions, and somebody better give you the bad news, and somebody better present the good news to you. And the good news is God. The bad news was I'm doomed to drink, and that's what step 1 tells a guy like me. Step 1 says, we admitted we're powerless over alcohol. They were talking, looking back. This is what we experienced. This is what happened to us. It says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Well, what does that mean? When they say we admitted we're powerless over alcohol, that was coming from their experience. They didn't theorize. This, based on our experience, we are powerless over alcohol, which means once we pick up, we can't stop. And we have a mind that takes us back to that which is killing us. So no power, no choice, and no control in the mind before I even pick up a drink. While I'm sober, sitting in an AA meeting, I lack power because it's a matter of time I'm going to go get drunk again. Step 1 tells me, the guy on page 21, the real alcoholic, that the time and place is going to come where I will get drunk. Period. Non-negotiable. Alcoholism is not interested in my 28 years. It's not impressed. It doesn't care. The only thing that's going to get in the way of me in the next drink is my Heavenly Father, period, non-negotiable. How do I get there? 12 steps. Now, once I pick up a drink, again, I don't have power, choice, and control in the body. If I'm sitting here tonight and say, well, I think it through, I played it safe to the end, I keep it green, I remember where I come from, and I get by, you're not alcoholic. You're a hard drinker. But if you're sitting here and says, I tried every remedy, and I keep landing in treatment, detox, jail institutions, I almost died, some of us died and were brought back, maybe I am that guy. And I got to wrap up just a couple of more things. There's a thing in the step 1, is a little dash and says, and our lives had become unmanageable. For me, being homeless, it was pretty obvious. A blind man can see my life is really unmanageable. I'm a bum. I'm homeless. So what happens is we come into AA. I come into AA, and I get sober. I get a little AA job. I put on clean clothes. I'm bathing twice a day, and I'm eating a few times a day, and I'm starting to look good and feel good. My life appears to be manageable. And I'm focusing in on looking good and sounding good and feeling good all the time. I become a worshiper of my emotions rather than God. That little dash becomes a wall and blocks me from the first half of the first step, forgetting that I'm going to drink. That's what step 1 says. And I'm focusing on, if I get the car, the girl, the money, the clothes, all this other stuff, then I'm good. And I'm not good Because none of that stuff means anything in the face of addiction when the mind says go drink and I go drink. And that is real unmanageability. That is the essence of step one, unmanageability. That the time and place is going to come and I'm going to get drunk and I can't even see it coming. I can't see it making a U-turn and headed for me. I'm totally oblivious to it. I can't see it coming, but it's going to get there, and it's going to hijack me, and then I go back to doing what I always did again. And the only remedy for this kind of condition, this fatal condition, because it's like having a terminal illness, is God, the G-O-D, the good orderly direction. And where do I find this power? In this book. Because the book is clear. My own conception of God, no matter how inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach. They put no demands on us. They blow the doors wide open. Whatever works for you, good enough. Are you willing to grow towards something? You say, yes, you're on your way. It says, we emphatically assure you, you're on your way. I'm willing to do what you did. You're good to go. There's no dogma, there's no rules, there's no restrictions. Whatever you believe is the way out. The thing is, a mustard seed of willingness is what I need back to step one, which God gave me that mustard seed to move a mountain. And my recovery, my life is one of moving many mountains. Not from my power, but from His power. And I'm out of time. That's all I got. Peace.